Hi everybody, welcome to 5 Minute Ministries. Continuing on with the explanation of the man who did not believe in New York City, I want to get to the part where the man is being interviewed by a reporter. And the man says, well, there was a whole city here. And the reporter says, don't you know that this park was commissioned and paid for by the president? And that he designed everything and he's the one who made it happen. He had to remove a whole forest just to get this park set up. And the man just refused to believe it. And the man says, well, have you ever met the president? And the reporter says, well, no. And the man says, well, I haven't either. So how do we know the president even exists? And it sounds far-fetched, but this is the way people treat God. They say, well, I've never seen God, so therefore God can't exist. And if he didn't exist, then he didn't create anything. Well, I want to focus on that in two parts. First, I want to deal with the idea that just because you haven't seen God does not mean he doesn't exist. Now, how do we know God exists? That's a question that believers get all the time. And we have to ask, well, how do we know anyone ever existed? How do we know Genghis Khan, Alexander the Great, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, James Brown for that matter? How do we know these people existed? William Shakespeare, just another example. People question him sometimes too, or at least his writings. Anyway, people will say, well, there's evidence. There's historical evidence for him. There's archaeological evidence for this person. This person has writings. This person has been quoted. This person, and they'll come up with all kinds of reasons. Well, but when it comes to God, those very things don't apply. They say, oh, if we can't use our five senses to detect God, then he can't exist. Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever seen Alexander the Great? Have you ever seen Julius Caesar? Have you ever seen any other historical figure? They say, well, we have all this evidence. Well, there's evidence of God too. There's archaeological evidence. There is historical evidence. There is the Bible itself and other historical references that reference the same story. Archaeologists and historians have found these very writings that are the other side of some of the events in the Bible. And of course, God, being the true author of the Bible, we also have his writings and we have his quotes. We see the results of what he's done, just like we see the results of any other historical figure. We've never seen them. We've never talked to them. We didn't use our five senses for those people. So how can you prove their existence? Because we see what has happened in their lives and the results of it. Those historical figures I mentioned had huge impacts, except maybe James Brown, but huge impacts on the world. And so did God. He proved his existence long ago. Now, on the other side of that, if you want to call it the other side, or a continuation, if we want to talk about how do we know God created everything? Well, there's dispute from Genesis. People will say, well, God didn't create everything in a day. He used evolution. He used millions of years. You see, because how do we know when the Genesis says day that he means a 24-hour period? Well, many people forget that God himself referenced this very creation, a very 24-hour period, in the book of Exodus. You go to chapter 20 when he's laying out the 10 commandments. He gives a commandment that says, 6 days you shall work. And on the seventh day is a holy day unto the Lord. For the Lord your God created the heavens and the earth and all in it in 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested. Now God himself references 7 days. Now, he said he created everything in 6. Now, that to me says that he is talking about literal days. So when we go back to Genesis, those are literal 6 days. He didn't take millions of years to do something. I want you to think of it this way. If he's making a commandment based on a 6-day creation period, and we want to expand it to mean something that's thousands of years, millions of years, 10 millions of years, that's a long work week. So when it comes to creation, yes, he did it all in 6 days. God designed it, he put it into motion, he spoke it, and there it was. and it only took 24 hours for each piece of creation. That's really what I'm trying to reference, and I almost messed up this ending, but God is the creator of it all. And how do we know he exists? The same way we know anybody exists. And I've already explained that. I have one more explanation for this story, and I will see you next time.